So, last week, when I was getting ready to go to dinner and I was deciding what to wear, I stood in front of my closet for a while and I realized that I don't actually want more clothes. Everything was neatly folded, everything was organized, but somehow my closet still felt really bloated and cluttered and heavy. And just to paint a picture for you all, my closet has two long shelves and a hanging rack underneath. And the shelves were so full, stacked with shirts, hoodies, tops, that I added not two, not four, but six stackable wire shelves from Crate and Barrel just to make it work. And the hanging rack was completely full. So full that I had to buy a separate rack just for my longer dresses. And that doesn't even include the dresser, with 5 drawers that hold all of my loungewear and my workout bras. You might be thinking, Dina, how did we get here? And as much as I'd love to shrug and tell you, I don't know, or worse, try to convince you that I genuinely need and wear all of these clothes, that would not be true. If I'm being honest, I rotate through the same handful of outfits while the rest of my clothes just sit there waiting for hypothetical plans that never actually happen. So, thinking back on it, for most of my adult life, I've kind of lived in this constant cycle of buying new clothes and occasionally getting rid of really lightly worn pieces to make room for more. But buying has definitely outpaced getting rid of things. The more time passes, the more I just accumulate. And the thing is, I actually enjoy the act of shopping. I like browsing in person and online and seeing what's out there. I like imagining different outfit combinations, planning looks for specific occasions. And I love the feeling of wearing something new and getting noticed in it. Everyone has their vices. And as far as vices go, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't really have a sweet tooth. I shop. Shopping is my dopamine hit. And like any dopamine source, the excitement kind of fades over time, which means I end up needing more of it to feel the same rush. And I think that's where it starts to get a little tricky. Because it's not really about needing clothes anymore, it's about chasing a feeling. If I trace it back, it probably started in high school. I remember spending my allowance on lip glosses from Hollister, overpriced baby tees from Abercrombie, and fold-up yoga pants from Pink. I was lucky enough to catch the tail end of the millennial mall era when hanging out at the mall with your friends was the place to be. Shopping wasn't just about clothes. It was social, it was entertainment, it was really part of fitting in. I remember when my friends would come over on Saturdays, we would do our hair and makeup together, and then my mom would drive us to the mall. We would always get dropped off by the Barnes& Noble entrance. Sometimes we would meet other kids from school, sometimes we would just see a movie, and sometimes we would get something to eat at the food court. And I promise, in the 2010s, the mall was a very cool place to be. We didn't have smartphones, we didn't shop online. There was this unspoken understanding that everyone from school would just meet at the mall. And I got lucky. The mall I went to was one of those outdoor ones with really cute cafes, there were plants everywhere. The food court even had this giant apple on top. And then in college, things started to shift. I started going out more, to parties and clubs, and suddenly my wardrobe had to evolve. I traded in my parent-approved wardrobe for something a little less classy. I bought outfits for Rush Week, I bought outfits for themed frat parties, and just to give you a taste, the frat party themes were things like CEOs and tennis hose, or anything but clothes, or the Islander party, or around the world. And I literally remember buying a flag to wear as a dress to the around the world party. I felt like I was buying clothes for very specific micro scenarios in my life. Like all these themes and moments that honestly maybe happened once. And the funny part is, my budget at the time was extremely tight. Like, actually stressfully tight. But somehow, I scraped just enough money to buy another sparkly skirt from Forever 21, or 100% polyester bubble skirt from Pattaya, which, if you went to school in Madison, you definitely know. And then after graduation, things really escalated. I got my first real job, I had a steady income, I was living in a high-rise in River North with my own full-size closet. And by then, smartphones were everywhere. And so was like online shopping. My college binges turned into late night scrolling. I spent so much time on Revolve and Shopbop. And I was absolutely a slut for loungewear. Like, I was ordering new aloe color drops the second they launched. And of course, the more I bought, the more I justified it. I mean, adulting is hard. For the first time, I was paying rent, utilities, I was traveling every week for work. I was under a lot of very real grown-up stress, and shopping became my way to cope. I told myself it was reasonable to treat myself. Saying that kind of reminds me of that Parks and Rec episode where Tom and Donna go all out and they keep saying, treat yourself, treat yourself. And I feel like that energy somehow turned into a whole cultural thing where self-care became tied to like buying yourself these little rewards, and I love a little treat. But somewhere along the way for me, shopping stopped being occasional fun, and it started becoming my default way to deal with stress. I would literally look forward to opening my laptop, adding items to my cart, and swiping my Visa and getting that little rush. And eventually, I hit a point where I had more clothes than ever. And somehow I still felt like I had nothing to wear. Which, if you really think about it, doesn't make sense. Like, how do you have more options than ever and still feel like you have nothing? It's so contradictory that it's like almost ridiculous. And I think part of it is just how fast fashion moves now. I remember before the internet as we know it today. I know, I'm really aging myself, but I'm talking about back when my parents had dial-up internet. Trends used to move in seasons. You'd wait for your local department store to release the next collection like a month before the season changed. And I remember begging my parents for a subscription to Marie Claire and waiting for each issue to see what was in and what was out for the month. Fashion felt slower, it felt more defined. And now it's like the complete opposite. We're constantly being hit with micro trends on TikTok, on Insta, and even with fast fashion and 2-day shipping, it still somehow feels like we just can't keep up. And I'm not saying you always have to be on trend. I actually really believe in developing your own style and just wearing what you like. But I also think it's impossible not to be aware of like how quickly things change, especially if you're living in Manhattan. And then on top of that, there's social media. I'm constantly seeing videos of these absolutely stunning girlies on my TikTok wearing new outfits every single day. And sometimes I can't help it. I'll see a sweater or a skirt and I'll just like fixate on it. Like suddenly, I feel like I need it. And if I give in, sometimes by the time I buy it, it already feels a little outdated. So it creates this like weird situation where you always feel a little behind. Like what you have isn't quite enough, even when it objectively is. And I also think the quality of clothes just isn't really what it used to be because everything is moving so fast. Brands have to keep up with this constant demand, and I feel like that comes at the expense of how things are actually made, like ethically sourcing materials or thoughtfully constructing pieces. It all kind of just like falls to the wayside. So now I'm paying more than I used to for things that are worse quality and go out of style faster, which is totally great. I love that. At the end of the day, I really do think clothes are a way to express yourself. You're the one deciding what colors you wear, what textures you're drawn to, what silhouettes feel right on your body. And honestly, that is kind of exhilarating. And I know I just spent the last 10 minutes talking about how fast trends move and how social media is constantly in your face, how the quality isn't what it used to be. But maybe that's exactly why it's worth developing your own sense of style. Like something that actually reflects you, not just what's circulating online that week. Because fashion is rooted in history and culture. And I could honestly do a whole episode on that. Maybe I will. But one thing I've been thinking about is the faster trends move, the easier it actually is to opt out of them. Like nothing really sticks around long enough anymore to feel mandatory. And even with social media, yes, it can be overwhelming, but you can also kind of like use it to your advantage. You can find people whose style actually resonates with you and slowly figure out what you like by noticing what you keep coming back to. And I think that's where I'm at right now. Because when I stand in front of my closet and feel how bloated it is, it kind of feels like a sign that it doesn't fully reflect who I am anymore. It's just a mix of everything. There are pieces I love, pieces I don't really resonate with anymore, things high school Dina would wear, things that never quite fit right, things I bought for an occasion that never actually happened. And I think I'm starting to realize that the question isn't, what should I buy next? It's more like, what do I actually want my closet to feel like? And how do I make sure it actually feels like me? On the surface, I feel like I should know how to answer these questions. I want a closet that feels like the opposite of what I have right now. I want it to be lean, minimal, and filled with pieces that I genuinely love. But when I actually start thinking about it and try to picture what that actually looks like in real life, I kind of get stuck. Because I don't fully know how to build a wardrobe that's minimal, but still works for my everyday life and still makes me feel stylish while I'm living in New York. When I was prepping this episode, I went down a bit of a research rabbit hole. I went on YouTube, I read blogs, magazine articles, Reddit, all of it. And there was one term that kept coming up over and over again: capsule wardrobe. And people really seem to romanticize it online. But when I tried to dig into it, like how to actually get there, I wasn't finding any clear answers. It was more like 5 pieces you need, or how to style neutrals, which is helpful in theory, but doesn't really tell you how to go from a completely full closet to something that is more intentional. And I think part of the reason for that is everyone's version of a perfect wardrobe is gonna look different. It depends on your lifestyle, your climate, your job, your body, your personality, all of it. And for reference, if we look it up on Google, Google defines a capsule wardrobe as a curated collection of clothing pieces, typically 20 to 50 items, that are designed to be easily mixed and matched. I mean, that sounds nice, but also feels very broad. like 20 to 50 pieces is a huge range. It kind of feels arbitrary. And I'm still left thinking, okay, but how do I actually get my closet there? That said, I do like the idea behind it. So instead of trying to follow someone else's version of a capsule wardrobe, I think I want to use it more as inspiration and figure out what that looks like for me. And then there's the actual process of cleaning out my closet, which historically has not gone well. Every time I try to organize anything, like my closet, my kitchen pantry, whatever, I end up pulling everything out, creating this massive mess. And then a few hours in, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, and have absolutely no desire to finish. And then everything kind of just sits there for days, sometimes weeks. And the worst, the absolute worst, is when I pile everything on my bed and then get so tired that I have to move it all back to the floor just so I can go to sleep. I think it's safe to say I want to avoid that method this time. Instead, I'm thinking it might make more sense to actually get clear on the end goal first. Maybe even write it out and then tackle my closet in smaller sections. Like maybe 1 hour at a time over the course of a few days. Something that feels manageable instead of turning it into this like overwhelming all day project. Okay, so definitely whatever I end up with, it has to actually support my real life. I live in New York, which means we got all 4 seasons. Winter can dip into the 20s with snow, summers are humid and hit the 90s, and then there's everything in between. So I need a wardrobe that can handle all of that. Pieces that work across seasons and that I can layer when I need to. And then there's how I spend my time. I work out about 5 days a week, mostly reformer Pilates, some cardio. So I do need reliable activewear. And I've actually found a system that works for me. I usually do neutral bottoms, so like gray sweats, light brown track pants, or shorts in the summer, and then colorful sports bras. Right now I'm rotating between hot pink, lilac, and a muted light blue. And I like this because everything mixes and matches, so I don't have to think too hard in the morning. I also work from home most of the time, which means a lot of loungewear. Occasionally I'll dress up for a meeting, but that's honestly like once a month. And then socially, I go out a few times a week to grab coffee with friends or to do casual dinners. So I do need outfits that feel put together, but still easy. Like a smart casual everyday vibe with a little bit of personality. I rarely go out at night anymore. No more clubbing, no more concerts. So realistically, I don't need like a huge going out wardrobe. And then every couple of months, I'll have something like a wedding or a birthday party or a holiday party. So I do need a small section for formal pieces. So I guess in my head, it kind of breaks down to something like 20% activewear, 30% loungewear, 40% everyday smart casual, and then 10% formal. Yes, I like that. That actually feels good. And then there's just how I want things to look on me. I want my clothes to be flattering. I've realized I really like how I look in soft blues, purples, and pinks, and also muted greens and mustard tones. I'm not really a fan of reds or neons, and I know this is controversial, but I don't love wearing black. I feel it's a little harsh on me. Like, I would honestly rather wear a full chocolate brown outfit than all black. These are just my preferences for now. I'd love to do a proper color analysis at some point, but this is kind of like what we're working with. Moving on to how things fit. That's honestly a really big one. I cannot tell you how many times I've bought something thinking I can make this work. And now I have a closet full of things that are slightly off. A little too tight, a little too loose, too long, which is especially a problem because I'm 5'3". And I think I need to be more honest with myself about that. If something doesn't fit right, it's not staying in the closet. And if I do love something, but it needs a small adjustment, I should just get it tailored so I actually wear it. Because fit is kind of non-negotiable. Clothes are supposed to work for me, not the other way around. And lastly, I want my clothes to actually feel good on my skin. I've been trying to pay more attention to fabrics. Things like cotton, linen, wool, silk, because they're breathable, softer, and more comfortable to wear all day. And I feel like everywhere I look now, it's polyester this, nylon that, and I'm just not a fan. It feels kind of plasticky, it traps heat, especially in the summer. It can get not cute very fast. And side note, I find it so funny when brands don't even list the material and it just says a blend. Or when they call it poly, like that somehow makes it better because it's a cuter word. Just tell me what it is. We the people yearn for cotton. We the people want cotton. And of course, there are exceptions. Like, I'm not expecting 100% cotton swimsuit. Synthetics make sense when they serve a purpose. But for my everyday basics, I want things that are high quality and actually last. I don't want them falling apart after like 2 washes. So now that I have like a clearer idea of what I actually want, I think the next step is just taking stock of everything I own. Because I feel like there are things in the back of my closet that have not seen the light of day in a very long time. And instead of doing my usual method, where everything ends up in a pile on my bed and I spiral, I think it makes more sense to go category by category. So grouping similar items together, all my hoodies and pullovers, all my jeans, all my dresses, and so on. I feel like doing it this way will make it easier to see duplicates, to see gaps, and just like the overall volume of what I have, without getting too overwhelmed. And as I go through each category, I want to give myself permission to do a first round of elimination. Things I don't like can go straight into a donation pile, and things that are worn out or falling apart can go into a discard pile. And then for whatever is left, I can actually be a little more intentional about it. Going back to everything I talked about, I can ask myself these questions. Does this piece feel flattering? Does it fit well? Does it actually serve a purpose in my life? Does it feel good on my skin? And if the answer is no, it's probably time to let it go. Bye-bye. I also want to pay attention to quantity. Like, if I start with 10 hoodies and end up with 8, the next question is, do I actually need 8 hoodies? How often do I wear them? Would I be fine with just like 5 or 6 hoodies? This part isn't really about strict rules. It's more about being honest with myself about like what I actually need. And I'm hoping that by the time I get through everything, I'll have a much clearer picture of what I actually own and whether there are any real gaps. Maybe I'll realize I need a few thoughtful pieces that make the whole wardrobe more versatile, not just more stuff for the sake of it. And I'm not gonna lie, I do kind of hope that that's gonna be the case, so I can justify treating myself to a couple of new pieces. I feel like that might also actually make it easier to let go of the things that aren't serving me anymore. And I want to acknowledge that letting go of clothes can feel weirdly emotional. I've definitely held on to pieces for years, thinking, oh, I paid so much for this, it would be a shame to get rid of it. Or maybe someday I'm gonna need this. But realistically, that moment might never come. And even if it does, 5 years from now, that item might not even like fit anymore, or it might not even feel like me. So I've been trying to reframe it a little. Letting something go isn't really losing it. It's giving it the chance to be worn and accepted by someone else, instead of just sitting in my closet untouched for years. And honestly, that shift makes it feel like less of a loss and more like a release. And something I've also realized I want to avoid is passing things off to friends or family just because I don't want to deal with letting them go. Like, if something is genuinely a good fit for someone I know, sure, I'll gift it to them. But I used to have an older neighbor who would give me bags and bags of clothes. And it was clear she had held onto them for years because she felt bad getting rid of them. And at the same time, most of it didn't fit me and it wasn't really my style. And she did this so many times. And I never had the heart to say anything because I understood where she was coming from. But it really stuck with me because it made me realize how often we do that. We hold on to things not because we love them or use them, but because we feel guilty about letting them go. Or because it's hard to admit that something we bought just didn't work out. It's like we feel like we owe it to the item to wear it just because it exists in our closet. And I get it. Clothes can be sentimental, they can hold memories, but at the end of the day, they're still just objects. They don't need loyalty, they don't need closure, and we are not obligated to keep them if they're cluttering our space. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is just acknowledge that this isn't working anymore. Time to let it go. So if you have pieces in your closet that don't fit, don't feel like you, or just make you feel meh, consider this your permission slip to just let them go. Okay, so in honor of everything we've talked about, I want to share some pieces from my closet that I really, really love right now. The ones that feel most aligned with how I want my wardrobe to evolve. The first piece is a floral sweatshirt from a Berlin-based brand called Antian. I found it randomly in a small boutique in Soho. It's made from really soft cotton terry with a slightly oversized fit that still feels intentional and flattering. The sleeves are just a bit shorter than usual, which makes it feel more styled and less bulky. And there's this seam across the back right under my shoulder blades. The way the fabric gathers into it creates such a nice shape when I wear it. The base color is muted navy blue with these large, softly painted floral patterns in light pink, pale green, and golden beige. It kind of reminds me of a dark winter garden. It's cozy and nostalgic, but still elevated enough that I feel put together when I wear it. The second piece is a pair of chocolate brown corduroy pants from Still Here. They're mid-rise with a relaxed leg, not too tight, not overly baggy, just really easy and classic. They're 100% cotton, so they're comfortable and breathable, and the color works as such a good neutral. I wear them with that floral sweatshirt all the time, which feels very on brand for how I want my closet to function. Pieces that naturally go together without me having to really overthink it. And then the third piece is a white halter top from Beck and Bridge. The back is completely open and the hem is trimmed with these soft feather-like details that almost feel cloud-like. It's a really simple piece from a color standpoint, but the texture is what makes it feel special. It's one of those things that is easy to style, but it still stands out. The fourth piece is a houndstooth winter jacket from Doen. It's made of wool, it has this oversized silhouette that reminds me of a 1950s chore jacket, structured but still relaxed. The pattern is mostly brown, white, and beige, but if you look closely, there are these tiny baby blue threads woven throughout. And the collar is this deep brown velvet. which just adds a really soft, unexpected detail. I feel like it's those little things that make the piece feel very special to me. The last piece I want to bring up today is a lime green mini cargo skirt. It's 100% cotton, and even though it's not in my usual color palette, I just fell in love with it. It has this fun, slightly 90s energy. It kind of reminds me of the outfits that Will Smith wore on Fresh Prince. So it feels playful and nostalgic, but still very wearable. Overall, I think what I'm drawn to right now is clothes that feel comfortable, they're intentional, and a little bit nostalgic. But still, they're easy to wear in style in my everyday life. Anyway, I will keep you updated on how this whole closet reset goes, but that's all I had for today, so thank you for listening, and let me know if any of this resonated with you, or if you have your own approach to building a more intentional wardrobe. I'm Dina, this is Casually Thriving. New episodes are out every Thursday.